We begin with the next session. We have two presentations by Mr. Rudraksh Mitra, Consultant World Bank, presenting on FICCI World Bank Employer Satisfaction Survey 2014 and 15. And we have with us Mr. Tim Askew Freng, Director, HES Consultants and former Group Executive Board Director and Managing Director, Middle East and India, W.S. Atkins, presenting on announcement of shortlisted participants for Newton Baba Innovation Fund. May I request Mr. Mitra to kindly begin his presentation.
Good morning. Thank you very much for being here. I'd like to begin with a little bit of background. So in 2009, the World Bank and FICCI conducted an employer satisfaction survey. And that survey found, like several other surveys that have followed, that employer satisfaction levels were low and that there were significant gaps both in the technical skills and the soft skills of newly recruited engineers. So in 2014, we conducted a follow-up survey, both to take stock of how overall satisfaction levels had changed, but also to look in some detail at employers' recruitment and training practices. And a key question that we had in mind is, given the widespread discussion of low satisfaction levels and skill gaps, had colleges, students, and firms been able to respond? And if so, how did they respond? So here's a quick look at the sample. We surveyed about 900 firms and received a response rate of about 82.5%. 16 main sectors were represented, of which the top 4, infrastructure, power, automobiles, and oil and gas, accounted for about 50% of the sample. And 87% of the firms in our sample had more than 100 employees, so they were mostly fairly large firms. And we followed up the survey stage with a series of focus group discussions, both with employers and with students and faculty at selected colleges that participate in a Government of India project called TechIP. So here are the findings of the 2009 survey. As you can see, employers were mostly dissatisfied, and only 33% said that they were very satisfied, and another 3% said they were extremely satisfied. So how have things changed since 2009? Well, it turns out that things have changed quite remarkably. 75% of employers are now very satisfied. And when we saw this result, we thought it would be important to go into what is behind this result. So we put together the data from our survey, but also the qualitative data that we got from our focus group discussions and interviews to try and identify some areas where change had taken place. And we identified 3 main areas. First, recruitment processes are now increasingly sophisticated. And as you can see, rankings are an important determinant of where firms recruit from, but these rankings are now increasingly internal rankings. So firms rely not only on published rankings, but they supplement these with their past experiences with recruits from a college, the acceptance rates of job offers from that college, and their anticipated attrition rates. In addition, firms are also now splitting their recruitment between government colleges and private colleges, recruiting from private colleges mostly for more routine tasks and from government colleges for more high-end R&D roles. And the benefit from recruiting from private colleges, firms say, is that students from private colleges usually demand lower salaries, have a higher acceptance rate of job offers, and have lower attrition rates. And finally, there's also an increasing use of open recruitment practices, and these are nationwide recruitments based on standardized tests. And for instance, a major IT firm recruits about 1/3 of its annual recruitment of engineers through this open recruitment process, which is about 1,000 engineers a year. And for these 1,000 positions, they receive about 1 lakh applications. So this is clearly a very competitive process, but it also allows them to access candidates in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, where they might not have been able to access these candidates otherwise. And what the firm says is that the use of this open recruitment process is one of the key drivers behind their improved satisfaction levels. Companies are also investing very heavily in training. So as you can see, 73% of the firms in our sample trained for 1 month or more. And they spent on average 84,000 rupees on training, and this amount is exclusive of the salary that they paid to recruits during the period. And while almost all companies use some form of on-the-job training, about 1/3 of firms also supplement this with some form of classroom training. And firms said that this classroom training is usually focused on technical skills and safety awareness, which they identified as 2 major deficits. there was broad consensus amongst most of the employers that we interacted with that soft skills have improved considerably. And soft skills have improved partly because of the actions of students who've responded to this discussion of low employability by seeking out soft skills training independently. But also colleges, particularly private colleges, have begun hiring behavioral coaches for their students. So in the fourth year of an undergraduate program, many colleges have mock placement sessions, mock interviews, pre-placement talks. And a similar role is also played by student clubs in these colleges. So alumni often come back to the college and play the role of a behavioral coach, and they bring the experience, their experience in the firm to the college that they once attended. And particularly in government colleges which don't have behavioral coaches, this is an important mechanism for building soft skills. A third key area of improvement that we found is that there's more industry-college collaboration. And as you can see from that picture, there are several areas where industry and college collaborate. But what that picture really fails to capture is the depth of these collaborations. So for instance, when we say customized, yeah, sorry. So, okay. Yeah, okay. Okay, sorry about that. So, the third final area of improvement that we found was that there was now much more industry-college collaboration. And as I said, that picture doesn't really capture the depth of these collaborations. So when we say customized degree courses, some colleges now collaborate with companies to set up specialized postgraduate programs where the company is not only designing the curriculum, but it's training all the teachers to teach the program, it's sponsoring all the students on the program, and it's also committing to hire all the students from the program. And this sort of collaboration is particularly important for companies that require very specialized skills, which they won't be able to find otherwise. But the extent of industry-college collaboration also depends quite a bit on how keen colleges are to seek out these collaborations. And we found that private colleges in general seek out these collaborations far more actively. In fact, none of the companies that we interacted with had this sort of a collaboration with a government college. Despite the improvement in overall satisfaction and in soft skills, technical skills are still unsatisfactory. And this is in line with the findings of the 2009 survey, where not only did firms say that technical skills were the most important, they were also the area where they were the least satisfied. And as you can see, 75% of firms said the lack of technical skills was the most important reason for them to reject a candidate. And we also asked firms to identify some of the constraints that prevent technical skills improving. And they pointed to two things that are quite well known. So first, there's a shortage of qualified teachers. And this is backed up by other data as well. So data from the AICTE shows that in private colleges, 30% of faculty positions are vacant. And a related concern is the outdated curriculum. And clearly, not having enough qualified teachers makes it very difficult to both design and to implement a modern curriculum. Going forward, we think there are 4 steps that flow from this work. So first, colleges and students need to maintain the existing momentum in building soft skills. But also we found that firms' recruitment and training practices make a big difference to overall satisfaction levels. And many of the firms that we interacted with said that they would benefit from, but also be willing to contribute to a shared repository of these skills. And finally, there's a need to reorient the curriculum towards enabling engineers to be able to solve real-life problems better. And this reorientation needs to be informed through greater interaction with industry so that the learning outcomes of students are aligned with industry's needs. With that, thank you very much.
May I now request Mr. Tim Askew to make his presentation?
On behalf of the Royal Academy of Engineering and the Newton Babba Fund, which has been set up to provide science, innovation and research activities, to promote science, innovation and research activities between the UK and India. The Royal Academy is the UK National Academy, leading the engineering profession and shaping national policy in engineering. In this case, we are the delivery partner for the Newton Baba Fund, and we're very pleased to be working with FICCI and its National Knowledge Functional Hub to use this fund to promote stronger links between academia and industry. So a lot of the speeches that we've heard over the last couple of days confirm the general interest in encouraging these links between academia and industry, and the need for a stronger two-way dialogue between the two. The Academy firmly believes that strengthening these links is one of the best ways of improving outcomes for both universities and for industry, by giving students the opportunity to learn their skills in the marketplace, so that when they graduate they're much better prepared and much more employable. In the UK, the Academy has been following various initiatives in this respect, and one of them is the Visiting Professor and Teaching Fellows scheme, where participating universities have visiting professors and teaching fellows to lecture and contribute to undergraduate projects. These bring fresh ideas and have led to the development of courses, even in some cases new courses, and then brought fresh ideas to teaching methods. For instance, I'm advised that at the University of Surrey, 120 students have been working on 11 projects, which varied between 3D mega building printing and to developing Formula student racing cars. And these projects are developed by the students, and they present their findings to a panel with awards, and the contributing companies such as Atkins, and my former company, receive prizes for their contributions to this. So we were here in May to sound out a mixed audience of industry and academia on the interest in this Newton Baba Fund. And we had a very constructive couple of days, and since then we've received some 50 applications expressing interest in getting this funding from a wide range of companies and joint ventures, and on very broad subject matter. The applications, I'm getting a bit behind here. Yeah. That's the National Academy, and this is the applications. The 50 applications were reviewed by panels from both FICCI and from the Royal Academy, and it's been reduced to 25 groups represented by the universities on this list. And we now propose to go through this list and respond to each of these applicants with a list of questions, looking for resubmission in 2 months, and we hope to conclude the award process by the end of March. So that's the plan. So these are the next steps. The Royal Academy and FICCI will respond to shortlisted 25 companies with further questions as soon as possible. There'll be a 2-month period for these universities to respond, and then the process will be concluded by the 31st of March. So that is a 5-minute presentation probably. And I'd like to thank FICCI for hosting the last couple of days. It's been excellent. We've heard some excellent speeches, and I look forward to this initiative progressing through to implementation and hopefully some good results. So thank you very much.
Questions? Any questions? Yeah.
I had a question. Your findings, this is addressed to Mr. Mitra, the survey. Your findings are very encouraging that it's moved from 33% to 75%. But that seems to fly in the face of every survey that I've heard which says 75% are not employable, 80% are not employable. Yeah. So how do you reconcile these two?
Those were some previous surveys. So even the World Bank's previous survey in 2009 found that only 33% were very satisfied. But our impression after this survey and our interaction with employers is that several things have changed. And at least as far as soft skills go, and because of better partnership between firms and colleges, those are areas where there's been significant improvement, and that's what's driving the overall satisfaction improvement. So I think you might find that going ahead, some other studies show a similar improvement. It's not on? It's on. Okay. So, yeah. There's nothing.
Ajit Mathur from IIM Ahmedabad. I have an alternative hypothesis to suggest as an explanation,
Okay.
which is that in 2007 there was an oversupply
Yes.
of institutions that were producing these engineering candidates, many of which had to shut down.
Right.
So there has actually been a filtering out process between 2009 and 2015.
Right.
Close to 1/3 of the polytechnics and engineering institutions have had to shut down in this country.
Right.
So what you're left with are those that were already the better ones. So there's a selection bias.
Right.
So the explanation that you're offering,
Right.
that somehow the satisfaction has improved because of something happening at the employer end,
Right.
may be an outcome rather than a cause.
Yes. So in fact, we have a more detailed version of this report, and that looks both at the oversupply and at the consolidation that followed. And you're right, that is a significant factor in improving the quality of intake. But
It has not improved. What has happened is that the less less able institutions shut down. That's what happened.
Yeah, in connection to these unemployability problems, so we do say that, okay, 75% unemployment does exist in India. So we wanted to know that what are the structured efforts which are being made by the government in this context to reduce this unemployment problem.
right. So I can't speak to all the efforts, but the World Bank supports a Government of India project called TechIP, and TechIP institutions focus quite a bit on employability, and a lot of what the institutions do is develop their placement cells, put into place tracking mechanisms, introduce more soft skills training, and that has some impact also of spreading reforms outside TechIP institutions. But I can't really speak to Government of India initiatives outside this.
I think in this context, Honorable Mohandas, sir, I request you to put some important lights on that, because I think it's an urgent problem, because the populations of young populations will be, around 90 crores in 2030. So how to address that, because otherwise it will be a very chaotic situation.
No, I totally agree with you. I'm very worried because every year about 2.4 crore young people attain the age of majority. 2.4 crores, 24 million, because we produced 25 million babies 20 years back, and now they're all getting to be majors. So 2.4 crores to 24 million come, and the jobs that are there are maybe 10 million, 1 crore only. And about 75% of this 2.4 crores want jobs, because I think 25% go to agriculture or get married, and the rest want jobs in the rural areas. We are producing only 1 crore. So every year about 80 lakh people maybe are without jobs. and 1 in 2 youngsters in UP without a job. Bihar, there's immigration. We have a massive challenge. This demographic dividend is not there. It's a nightmare. It's already evident. And unless India grows fast and create those jobs in manufacturing, in services, in labor-intensive industries, I think we got a huge social problem. The reality is very, very different from government statistics, and I think it's a problem. The only thing is we have to be together and focus on labor-intensive jobs, develop infrastructure to open up markets. It's a massive job. I think all of us should talk to policymakers and make it very urgent.
Okay, I think we'll have to close. You can have offline discussion. I just wanted to make one point that the survey was actually looking at the employability factor and not creating employment. So not about the unemployment factor. So that's one thing. And I think regarding creating employability, there are various actions that are happening around the country. Not as much as one would like, but small steps are being taken, and I think the initiative with Royal Academy of Engineering and FICCI under the Newton Innovation Bhabha Fund is a step towards it, where we are talking about increasing mobility, cross mobility between faculty and students, and which will impact in curriculum improvement, which will lead to employable graduates eventually. And I think regarding when we are talking about the unemployable factor, the next session probably is going to deal with it, how universities can become a part of creating employment or employment generation. And so we have the next session on entrepreneurship and graduate employability, learnings from Asia and beyond. That is what we will be starting. So please give a big hand of applause to our speakers. Thank you so much. And now we will move into the next session, and may I invite Professor M. Anand Krishnan, former Chair BOG IIT Kanpur. He was also our former chairman of our higher education committee and architect of the National Knowledge Functional Hub that we have been talking all over. So, sir, may I invite you to the dais, please? May I also invite Mr. Anand Sudarshan, founder and director, Sylvant Advisor. Anand is going to be moderating this session, and Professor Anand Krishnan is going to be chair of the session. And we have panelists with us, Professor David Richardson, Vice Chancellor, University of East Anglia, Dr. Pavel Lukshka, Professor of Practice, Moscow School of Management, I'm sorry, I'm not able to pronounce it. How do you pronounce, Pavel? Skolko, member of Expert Council Agency of Strategic Initiative. Pavel is also going to be working with us very closely on the skill initiative. There is a BRIC Business Council which has been set up, and under the BRIC Business Council there is a skill working group. So Pavel is driving from Russia, and FICCI is driving from India, and there are similarly different organizations from South Africa, Brazil and China. So we are working on that initiative. And may I now also invite Professor Debashish Sanyal, Dean NMIMS, and last but not the least, Mr. Sanjay Vijay Kumar, Chairman Startup Village, the young entrepreneur.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Shobha. A pleasure and honor to be with all of you. Without much ado, I will take your permission to get the session up and running. We will not go through the detailed introduction of the panelists. You have the profiles of the panelists with you. It's an outstanding team, and it's my privilege to be the moderator and to be guided by Professor Anand Krishnan, one of my gurus. Mohan actually set the stage very nicely with these remarks that he made, because this is all about employability and employment and entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship creates employment, and employment needs employable people. Institutions produce both. So employability and entrepreneurship, when we were just discussing a little earlier, are two sides really of the same coin in as far as the institutes, universities and institutions are concerned. Now, there has been a lot of focus on startups. There has been a lot of numbers that have been floating around, from about 3,000 odd startups that started 3 years back. By 2020, the number is expected to reach about 12,000 startups. The numbers are large. India is an entrepreneur oriented, country in many respects. We are an entrepreneur nation. And at the same time, the reality of what Mohan spoke about, and even if I allow for retirement, Mohan, just to take on what you said, we really have a gap of probably anywhere in the 4 to 5 million on an annualized basis staring at us. And as productivity starts improving, and as automation starts coming in the manufacturing sector, which currently employs, currently constitutes about 22 to 24% of the GDP, the number of people employed in manufacturing may actually, on a per unit basis, come down. So while Make in India and other initiatives obviously will drive up more investments and therefore drive up employment, we also have to look at the reality of the fact that employment and therefore a much stronger focus on employability. If I'm going to recruit 5 people when I did 10, I will therefore look at the employability a lot more as an employer than I did before. So employability becomes even more important and even more critical. Now, skill, yesterday we were, somebody was talking about India diverged in the 50s with research and teaching being placed in 2 different institutions. And I actually feel that India diverged across 3 vectors. It's not just teaching of college students, it's not just research, it's also skills. We took skills and put them under ITIs and gave them a completely different path. And if you look at a country like Germany, when all these 3 are intertwined, we probably can pick up several cues from how these can harmoniously get together into a very interesting kind of a combination as we go forward. Keeping all of these things in mind, the format that we are going to follow is pretty simple. I'm going to request each of the panelists to quickly give their opening remarks, and then we will open it up for a conversation, and I will then open up for questions and answers, and we will set the rules of the games for questions later, and then at the end of which we will request our Bhishma Pitamah, Professor Anandakrishnan, to summarize and give an India perspective, which hopefully will be an interesting takeaway for a lot of us from the institutional side in the room today. Is that okay? Right, so let's get going. I'm going to ask Sanjay to set the whole ball rolling. As I was mentioning to him outside, he is the consumer. As an entrepreneur and as a creator of entrepreneurs, he is the consumer of students graduating out of institutions. Sanjay, your thoughts?
Sure. So, good morning to all of you. So I have like 3-4 minutes, so I'll quickly summarize and just give you a quick highlight on what I've been doing and experimenting with. So personally, for people who don't know me, I'm 31. Mohan said I was 26, so he's been pretty much making me younger all the time. So a decade back, when I was in college in 2005, was when internet hit me. I was born and brought up in Trivandrum, God's own country, devil's own children, happy holiday home, nobody does work there. And when I was in college and when internet happened, my whole life changed. I figured out young kids around the world were doing startups, and for the first time in my world, I heard about things like Silicon Valley. And I started wondering, why aren't people in our country doing the same? And nobody around me was doing that. So for some reason, I figured out maybe I should just take the road less traveled. I raised around $500,000 when I was in 3rd year in college. I bootstrapped that to over 100 crores in revenues, 10-25 crores in profits over the next 6 years. And then I figured out maybe I should teach people internally how to do this. So then we started incubating companies internally, and my other co-founders started building companies which became 100 crores. And then I started to figure out, is it possible that we can teach a lot of other people to do this? Because one of the key things that I realized is that it was not me. It was just the people around me. So I figured out a team or an individual cannot succeed unless you have a lot of people, an ecosystem of people around them who really want to see them succeed. So along with Government of India, we started experimenting this thing called Startup Village. And all these are experiments in my life. We set up this incubator, which was the first public-private partnership incubator, because till then, most of the incubators in this country were in academic institutes, in IITs and IIMs. But this was the first experiment where they said, let me go, give this guy who's been practically doing this on the ground an opportunity to do that. And today I think there are more than 7,000 teams which have applied. Almost 500 people have started companies, 250 of them legally registered companies. And in 3 years, almost 3,000 new employment opportunities were created, which led to a significant cultural change in the state of Kerala. So practically with this background, I'll give you the context in which I'm operating today. One, like Mohan said, we need to create 1 million jobs a month for the next 20 years. It's a big problem to solve. I also believe that the world 400 years from now will be known as the pre-internet world and the post-internet world. So, internet has defined every frontier we have. We go to banks, we go to ATMs, we use them on the mobile phones. Every industry, media, every industry is, influenced with technology. The last frontier, I think, is education. And in the context of industry, the way the jobs have been created and the way companies have been created is amazingly changed. The world's largest media company, Facebook, doesn't create content on its own. The world's largest retailer, Alibaba, they don't own warehouses. The world's largest taxi company, Uber, doesn't own any taxis. And the world's largest hotel room rental company, Airbnb, doesn't own any rooms. So the way these companies have been created, new companies, the world of industry creation has changed. And the world and the context of education has also changed. Gone are the days when you get taken in electrical engineering degree like my dad and get employed in a single company for 40 years. Gone are the days when all you went to your engineering college was to get a job. And I think gone are the days when we measure kids from theory. It's got to go to practical results. And I also believe gone are the days when we have continuously gamified, I believe, an education system to create higher paying engineers and higher paying doctors and more higher paying engineers and more higher paying doctors. And everybody wants to build a bigger and bigger Delhi, and everybody is on this race to run to the top of a pyramid. And it's a rat race, and at the end of the race, even if you win, you're still a rat. So my thesis on this, the thesis that I work on is, I believe learning is going to be lifelong in the new world. Okay. I also believe that you only need 3 skills now. One is you need knowledge to gain new knowledge. So how do you gain new knowledge? Because it's going to change so rapidly. You need skills to learn new skills. And you need experiences to learn from new experiences. And this, I believe, is going to be the fundamental of education going forward. So I'll tell you couple of experiments that I've been doing to get the whole ecosystem changed on this path, while all this is like 40,000 feet. On the ground, we've been doing small experiments because the change in education is highly resistive. So we do stuff in schools, colleges, and universities. I'll give you 3 examples. So one is, we want to create the next Zuckerbergs, the next Jack Dorseys of Twitter. So these guys started learning to code when they were 12 years. And I believe in the internet world, just like you learn languages like English or Hindi, programming is going to be a language that you have to learn if you want to get employed. And we've started this program, which is the largest learn to code program in the country. We've given 10,000 kids in 8th standard at 12 years of age, 10,000 Raspberry Pis. So when I did engineering from one of the best colleges in the state, I know auto cycles and diesel cycles and thermodynamics, and I have 80% marks. But you keep a petrol engine and a diesel engine side by side, I can't figure out which is what. I can't fix any of these things. So Raspberry Pi is like a small computer board. It teaches kids. It's like giving an engine and saying, come, let's learn mechanical engineering. So it's like teaching how to code. We've been setting up this thing called Fab Labs along with MIT. So I believe all engineering students, and my focus is solely on engineering students. See, 1 million engineering students get admitted every year, and all of them go through these workshops. And this is like carpentry and lathe and plumbing and fitting and all these things which are from the manufacturing era of 1960s. But if you go to Tesla in Silicon Valley and they're building cars, there aren't people working in this plant. It's all by a robot called KUKA. It's a German manufactured robot. So we figured out that, if you want to teach kids, digital manufacturing, you've got to change all this carpentry and, throw out all this stuff out of the air. You've got to bring in 3D printers, milling machines, laser cutters, computer control cutting, and embedded programming. So we've set up 2 Fab Labs with MIT in Cochin and Trivandrum, and we're changing the education curriculum to reflect that. We're setting up one super fab in Visakhapatnam because in Andhra Pradesh is super excited with all this stuff. And this super fab is going to be the most advanced fab lab outside of MIT itself. And the third is we've been working with the university in Gujarat Technological University, to set up what is called minors in entrepreneurship. So across the world, people have majors and minors in their education system. So let's say you major in computer science and you have a minor in psychology. That's because universities teach many subjects, but because we are mostly affiliated colleges, we only have like computer science, mechanical engineering, industrial engineering. So everybody is in like a bucket. You don't have like cross-functional skills. So we've started introducing this thing called minors in entrepreneurship, where you can convert your final year BTech project to a startup, and then it becomes part of your degree. So you can become like a BTech in computer science with a minor in entrepreneurship. And effectively what we're doing there is just two things, and that's how I'll summarize my experience. See, one, I think, people need to work in groups, because in the real world, all of us work in groups. You can't create an education system, and this is what I believe, and I might be wrong in this, right? You can't create an education system for 18 years, you're teaching the guy, go for individual excellence, because in the real world, ego really matters. Unless you learn how to work in groups, you can't take the country forward, you can't take any institution forward. But you're not teaching them that, you're teaching them only individual excellence. And the second is, you've got to take out the stigma of failure. You've got to redefine success. So in the early days, success used to be, if you did a startup, you've either succeeded or you failed. You become rich or you didn't become rich. We've completely re-engineered this in Kerala. Today we tell them there are 6 ways to succeed. One of the ways, so 4 are group results and 2 are individual results. One of this is you get funded and you create a successful company. The second one is you create something which of value, so you get into an accelerator. The third is you've created something of value, so people have acquired your company as a team. And the fourth is you didn't build $1 billion business, you build a sustainable business. So it makes 20 lakhs of revenues and 10 lakhs of expense, and you're 24 and you have 10 lakhs of profits every month, which is great. It's great for job creation. And then obviously because you've done practical results, you get 2 individual things, which is you get a great job, and that's an industry specific job because now you have industry employable skills. And you can now go for higher education, and when you write your statement of purpose, instead of writing I'm greenhouse captain, yellow house captain, I was there in my technical festival committee in school and college, you can say here is what I built, and here is why I need more skills to build better things. So that's what I've been doing pretty much as experiments, and some of these experiments have been getting scaled up nationally, so I'm pretty excited with that. Thank you.
Thanks, Sanjay. Quick question, what's been the response of these experiments from institutions?
So everywhere I go, I see if you want to change this, you need to change If you want to change this, you need to change the entire system. So for example, in Gujarat, we found the first vice chancellor who said, I'm going to convert this to an entire university entrepreneurship policy. So Gujarat Technological University is the first university which has a Gujarat technology policy. In my home state of Kerala, we are happy to do it after G2 has done it. See, nobody wants to take the first big break or the first big thing. You've got to be an innovator.
But you do have some responses which are pretty good.
Oh, for example, in Gujarat, I think 4,000 students applied even before we set up the facility.
Okay, terrific. All right, so that's the view of the entrepreneur and the person who's enabling entrepreneurs to fly. So it's very interesting ideas, and we'll come back to the practice part of it, which I really noted. I want to spend a little bit of time, and I noticed Dr. Lishko was vigorously agreeing with you, so we'll talk about that a little later. But in the meanwhile, let's get an institutional view, and I'm going to request Professor Richardson to get this off the ground. Now, Sanjay spoke about a completely new way of looking at it. Is that something that happens in your view, can happen? And do you have some examples that you can share with us as well, in addition to your opening remarks?
Well, thank you very much. And I think we just heard some really quite inspirational examples there from Sanjay. And it is indeed, I think, a direction of travel which many universities, certainly in the UK, are taking. I want to comment on 4 areas in particular, which I think will then set up some discussion for later. And that is, as a Vice-Chancellor, I think key areas for me and in developing enterprise are around the students themselves, developing enterprising spaces and partnerships, developing enterprise ideas, and also importantly, having the right role models for our students. So if I just begin briefly with students, and again as a Vice-Chancellor, when I think of students, I think of 4 key values, and that is around innovation, around creativity, around collaboration, and around ambition. And when I look around my university, University of East Anglia, I see students that have those values in abundance. And I've been visiting a number of Indian institutions recently, and I found the same in the students I've met at those. And I think we've just heard exactly those sort of values in the previous presentation. And importantly, these are values that employers yearn for. And therefore, I think as a Vice-Chancellor, I owe it to my students, we as Vice-Chancellors owe it to our students to ensure that we provide environments in our campus which can draw out these values. But we can't do this alone. We need to do this in partnership. And we've heard a lot about partnerships during this conference. And that partnerships needs to be partnerships with government, with business, and also with our alumni. And together, we need to then invest in resources that allow the students to realize their potential and their ambitions. And that will involve creative and innovative teaching and bringing new technologies into teaching, but it also requires creative and innovative spaces. And I'd like to share perhaps one example of that which we've been doing at my university at UEA. And this is a space in which we've been developing an enterprising space around partnerships. Now, UEA is a World Top 150 university in the Times Higher that we heard from Phil Beatty yesterday, and actually within those rankings we're 50th for research citations in the world. And we heard earlier on again in the conference yesterday how we need to link research with entrepreneurship and research with business. And we're looking to actually pull business into our university through leading with world-class research, and then help business translate our research into new enterprises. And that's research that comes from students as well. So last month we celebrated a landmark in this, and this was actually when Lord Karan Bilamoria, educated in Hyderabad, a great entrepreneur, opened a new enterprise centre on our campus. Now, importantly, this enterprise centre was a collaboration, a partnership between our university, the European Regional Development Fund, so the region investing, the Biotechnology and Biological Research Council, which is a government research council investing, and also our local enterprise partnership. And so this is an example of how we have to bring partnerships together to recognise the need to invest in our students. Now, the building itself is a very fine building. It's a great low-carbon building, apparently the best low-carbon building in the UK. But it's an iconic building that actually helps to attract businesses because it's a rather unique space. And therefore, it becomes a space through which we can actually endeavour to get collaborations with our businesses and students together. And it's a place where we can develop the enterprising ideas. So in such an enterprise centre, we provide students and staff with the space to incubate their business ideas. It's very important to get staff involved, but they incubate these ideas alongside local entrepreneurs and growing businesses. But it's not just solely an enterprise centre. We've actually made it half full of teaching space and half full of rentable commercial space. So therefore, we're actually integrating business and teaching together in a way that brings business people and academic communities together. Now, we actually make sure that all of our students get some of their curriculum taught in this enterprise centre. And that therefore ensures that all of our students, whether they want to or not, and not all do, I concede, will actually rub shoulders with business and with entrepreneurs, just as part of their curriculum. And then we ask those businesses to help engender and embed the sort of skills we need to help develop employability and enterprise into that curriculum. So these are important kinds of spaces to develop on campuses, I think. But the spaces alone aren't enough. We need to develop new courses that actually bring out the students' creativity and their entrepreneurship. So we've developed a new course, a new MSc in Enterprise and Business Creation. And that's taught entirely within this space in conjunction with our business partners. Now, I mentioned before that universities should promote innovation, creativity, collaboration, and ambition. But there is a new purpose to, I think, promoting these values now, and that is rooted in creation of businesses. And I think that's what we need to now be trying to achieve. But here, I think our students need role models, and this is my final point then, Chair. Because there was, I think, a traditional assumption, certainly in the UK, that actually starting businesses was something you did later in life. We've just seen a very good example that that is absolutely not the case. But there was this view that you had to get experience working somewhere else first. But now, I think many students are considering starting their own business as an alternative to joining a graduate scheme in a blue-chip company. They actually want to generate businesses. They want to help economic growth. They want to help develop jobs in their communities. They want to help locally and regionally and indeed globally. But they do need role models for this. And so what we've done is we've actually set up a student enterprise fund, which has actually been funded entirely through our alumni. And these are successful alumni who've gone on to lead in businesses or become successful entrepreneurs. And the good thing is that they're not only putting the money into this enterprise fund, but they're also putting time in to mentor the students, to help them develop their ideas. And of course, They turn up in very fine cars. They turn up in their Porsches, and our students quite fancy owning a Porsche. So they actually look at these iconic figures and think, yes, you know, if we talk to them, if we learn from them, that will help us. So I think you do need your role models, and that takes me back to our friend, our university's friend, Lord Billimoria, because he came up with the idea of Cobra beer while he was studying in the beautiful spaces of Cambridge University, while he was a student. And so for us, he's the very epitome of a student entrepreneur and an inspiration for a future generation of students. A great role model for students, which is why we asked him to open our enterprise centre, so we could use him as a role model for student enterprise going forward. So I would encourage you to find such role models when you're actually trying to stimulate students and stimulate enterprise. Thank you.
Thanks, Prof. Quick follow-on question. So you spoke about creating a space and the infrastructure and an ethos that will facilitate, you know, people to learn. You've got a role model in place. Now, and Sanjay spoke about practice being at the core of curriculum. I think that's one of the key things that he brought out. Two questions for you as follow-on quick questions. One is, how do you mainstream what you have done, which is still an add-on or a center of excellence or a separate space? How do you mainstream that into every piece of curriculum that you teach, number one? And the second thing which you didn't touch upon, I'd like you to speak about, the greatest influence in all of this are the faculty. Now, what is it that a university and institution can do to help faculty transform their own minds so that they teach the students for the context of tomorrow rather than teach the student based on their own experiential context of yesterday?
So we have 22 schools and 4 faculties in our university. Every one of those schools has a director of employability and enterprise, whose job it is to help embed the sort of skills you need to develop your employability credentials and enterprise credentials into curricula. And we embed those into curricula from year 1 and then ramp it up through curricula. So you identify, even in your courses, even in your most fundamental teaching, how you can actually bring some of that teaching relevant to the employability sector. Now, the other thing is that we've actually built our enterprise centre right in the heart of the campus. We haven't put it on the periphery. And I mentioned that we were scheduling every student to make sure that they were being educated in that centre, so that they would actually get that enterprise as part of their curricula. And we built that centre opposite the sports park, so no student can miss it. It can't be avoided. We also opened it at the same time as we'd opened something called Career Central, which is a hub to help develop the students' career skills complementary to the Enterprise Centre. And we built that opposite the Students' Union. So when they leave the Students' Union, they can't fail to notice the Career Central building as well. So we're integrating these things right in the hearts of the campus, not the periphery of the campus where they could be missed. You asked about staff, and I think that's absolutely right. You need to actually get staff on board for these initiatives. And actually ensure that they are able to actually help the students develop their skills. And we've actually been asking staff to do professional development training to help make sure that they've got the skills that they need to help develop the students. Now, of course, the staff are academics. They're not necessarily entrepreneurs. But a key thing is that they need to be able to help their student advisees by directing them to the right places. So they can direct them to key people in the Enterprise Centre or to key people in Career Central to make sure that they know who to talk to if the staff member themselves doesn't have the skills that are needed.
Interesting. Prof. Sanyal, your opening remarks. One of the interesting things that Sanjay spoke about, and I know we chatted about outside as well, is this teaching people to feel like winners when they fail.
Yeah,
if you can just touch upon that as well.
Thank you. I'll mostly speak from the point of view of business school. Yes, the business school across India as well as in Asia, they do recognize that we need more entrepreneurs because the entrepreneurs influences economic growth and thus provide a lot of employability. Business school per se usually imparts, helps in developing entrepreneurs by offering courses. Some schools offer programs dedicated to develop entrepreneurs. Some of our courses, mainly elective courses, which the students can opt for who wants to become an entrepreneur. The latest trend is that in last 5 years or so, we see across India and across Asia, is that the number of students opting for this elective course, I'm talking about the B category, has enhanced significantly. Let me talk about it. In MIMS, in last 13-14, it was about 22 students took this course. In 14-15, they took about 74 of them. And I get the information that this year, 15-16, there are 165 students who opted for this course of entrepreneurship. The point is not that, that all these 165 will go for starting up a business day one. It's not that, but yes, they are ready to take up the responsibility. They are eager to do some entrepreneurial venture in days to come. Not all opt out from placement from day one to start an entrepreneurial venture, but yes, they are in the edge to think about and start off a venture. The good story is that across business school we find many of them are opting out actually. Last year we found 4 students opted out and started their own venture in NMIMS. Altogether 7 students actually started this year out of the group 14-15 who graduated, started the venture, 1 in automation and 1 is in energy sector and 4 in IT application. But the point is that this number is going up over the years. And many of them, after leaving the school, they go for a couple of years of corporate life because they would pay back their loan. But if I see the trend in most schools in last 3 years, in my school I find in NMIMS about 30 students have opted out from job and started their own venture. So there is a healthy trend of new generation guys, students to take up this venture, and the risk-taking ability of the new boys seems to be more better than what it used to be previously. The other programs that many institutes like NMIMS, ISB, SPGen, they offer a dedicated program to develop entrepreneurship. And at NMIMS we have 2 programs. One is a 2-year MBA program for a family-owned business and a 5-year integrated program which started last year, focused towards developing good entrepreneurs. And this not only to take care of the professional requirement of second and third generation entrepreneur, but also to help them to incubate new ideas and start new ventures. So in addition to the business school doing all these activities, they also support the students to incubate idea by many of the institutes starts having incubation centers, and many of them also excites the students to take up these ventures by bringing in entrepreneurs who have succeeded or failed, and failed then succeeded again, and to share their failure and success with the students. So this is very important because students have to, as Anand was saying, needs to know that failure is not a stigma. I'll come to that later on. But as far as the dedicated program is concerned, there are a lot of interesting success stories that we have noticed. In fact, if you see over the last 3, 4, 5 years, we have got some very good new ventures coming up from the portal, and we like companies like Aarti Drugs, Shalimar Group, Jackson Papers, then Jodi Blue, then M3M Delhi in Delhi, the Bharat Poetries, then Lakshmi Optic, many new entrepreneurial venture has been taken up by the students of this school, and I'm quite sure this same type of story is there in many of the IITs and IIMs, and that shows that what India is going for. Yes, I see the business school playing a big role in developing entrepreneurs in days to come, but there are a lot of, I see a lot of good things happening, but there are a lot of challenges also to go forward. One of the big challenges is that getting good trained faculty in this space. Getting a trained faculty, a good faculty who is motivated and who can inspire the people to go forward is required. Also, the short-term focus on results have to go away. And also, as I want to say, failure is a part of such type of activity. Till few years back, when one student is to get loses their job because of downsizing of organization, one is to feel bad and shy, and it was a stigma. Nowadays they don't feel bad at all. Because of downsizing, a student loses job, he enjoys, he does party, he goes around the country, he takes it as a sabbatical type of, and so such type of culture has to come also within the society and to the students. And I think business schools still have to learn how to educate students who are failure is a part of life, and they should not feel bad if they fail in a venture. That's we have to learn shortly. We have to have. It's very difficult to get good people, like expert people who. Good incubation, to run incubation center like Vijay. I really congratulate Vijay for the endeavor he has done. And also the cultural change in society to accept failure of the awards. Many parents still want their children to get a good corporate job rather than take risk. And I think the mindset of the new society should change also, and we should help support the exciting ideas that they have. We see in various competition, our students have got very good ideas, they're winning. Across business school, you see so many good ideas comes up, and the corporate does the challenges, but very few ideas translate into venture. That's the most important thing which is coming up. So we have to see how can we do that. And so this is for some of the initial remarks with which I would like to stop. Thank you.
Thanks, Prof. Very, very quick one follow-on question. The better a business school is, the more it works on scarcity, right? From an intake perspective, you take 500 students, you probably get 50,000 applications for it. What happens in a world of abundance? In what way do you think, and we have spoken a lot about entrepreneurship, and I'm thinking more and more about the employability side as well. What happens in a world of abundance when there is the natural filtering that does not exist? Technology is going to perhaps disrupt many things that are going to happen. What would be the role of of a business school, since we are in that context, keeping both entrepreneurship and graduate employability in the context of a world of abundance in mind?
See, even if there is abundance, people will see, as Vijay had put it, knowledge for more knowledge, skill for more skill. So we have to do something. The business schools and other education schools has to come up with programs which can further help this who wants the skill and go along and do their whatever they want to do. It will be difficult because the limiting factor will go away. But the thing is that in a world of abundance, there will still requirement for professionals who can manage the show.
I think the word that entrepreneurs use is pivot, isn't it, Sanjay? So I think institutions need to learn how to pivot and pivot very quickly, and I think that's the point that you're highlighting. I'm hearing from you. I'm going to now move to Dr. Lukya, and then I'm going to ask him to, in addition to touching upon having heard the entrepreneur view and the institutional view, and take a larger strategic view of the whole thing. I'm also going to ask him to just speak a little bit about one point that Sanjay raised in the beginning, which actually is hit me pretty deeply, which is curriculum getting translated or transformed into a practice-based one at the absolute very core. So if you can just touch upon that as well, it'd be nice.
Thank you. And it's an interesting panel that combines two big themes of employability and entrepreneurship. And actually, we see there is a core of bringing them together, and I hope also to touch on that. So I think some of the questions that were already raised, including the role of entrepreneurs as creators of jobs, are absolutely essential. But what I think is that we need to go one step further and say that entrepreneurs are also creators of the new economy. And that we are in a very interesting situation in time now where world is undergoing one of the major transformations. And yes, one of the drivers is internet, but there are also other factors such as new materials, such as autonomous robotics, biotechnology and genetics, the wave of technologies coming into the society, and the role of startups as transformers of the economy and respectively of society becomes essential. So some call this third industrial revolution, was the notion of Jeremy Rifkin. Others speak also about the rise of network-centered society. And of course, the role of all these technologies in creating the economy of abundance is extremely important. So, of course, in addition to the rise of new economy, we will also experience the major shift in the structure of jobs. And some people say that in 20 years, around 70% of jobs in the economy may become vulnerable to the new technologies and the replacement of the existing jobs by technologies. And one of the highlights of what has been happening to Indian economy, but also around the globe, is the destruction of call center market, which has been very rapidly going in the last 2-3 years due to voice recognition and automated scenario software technology. So this is just one of the many examples of how these large and labor-intensive sectors can be destroyed. So the question is that at the moment, emerging economies are more of agenda takers in the situation of the development of new technologies and new sectors. And my question is how they can become more agenda setters. And so I think in order to respond to this, we need to ask ourselves what the world we actually strive to create and what kind of people we want to see in this world and what kind of people are able to create this world. And of course, entrepreneurs and people with new skills, or what we can call skills of the future, are essential for that. And so also what is essential is alignment of research, of innovative entrepreneurship, and of course the creation of new skills. And just to give some examples of the work we conduct in Russia and now expand internationally, is we try to focus on 3 aspects of this. So one is building a vision for the future which can consolidate efforts of different players. For this, it was very instrumental for us to work on the skills of the future. And about a year ago or 2 years ago, we published a book called Atlas of Emerging Jobs, which talks about approximately 200 emerging jobs in 25 sectors of economy. And it also highlights how many jobs will be disappearing. And so it actually was very stimulating for universities and colleges and future employees to reassess their strategies in terms of how they build skills. And the second thing is to promote skills of the future, and it was very helpful for us to partner with the World Skills International Movement, and we created a number of new formats within World Skills, including World Skills High Tech, which are very advanced high technology skills for emerging sectors. And we conducting this second year in a row, just came from this one, was conducted in Ekaterinburg. We plan for next year to do it within the BRICS context, and hopefully we will see Indian representatives during this competition. And in addition to that, there is a format called Junior Skills, which addresses not a little bit younger cohort of children aged 10 to 17, which basically get engineering skills at that early age. And that helps them to and get very sophisticated tasks such as assembling satellites, real satellites. And these ambitious tasks help them to get integrated in this new world of technology and set up ambition to become entrepreneurs when they enter the higher education. And third aspect is the recently launched program or initiative called National Technology Initiative, which is an idea that Russia should refocus its innovation policy and address markets of the future. And now we're working with 9 markets of the future, including unmanned vehicles, ground vehicles, unmanned marine transportation, brain-computer interfaces, and so on. And within that initiative, we have several aspects, including nationwide business acceleration programs, Engineering clubs to stimulate children and student creativity in technology. And very important is to transform universities across Russia into accelerated territories of accelerated development. And this is government-backed, but it's driven by education and is driven by industries that want to create breakthroughs in Russian society. And we actually offer, through the mechanism of skills development working group of BRICS, to share some of these ideas with India. And to conclude, I think we need three focal areas to work on when we talk about entrepreneurship and employability in the context of this transformation I was speaking about. First, we obviously need champions of change, and we need them on several levels. We should work with young people, very young people, with students, and we need to work with adults. So people aged 35 and older are also champions of change, and they can lead the change because they already have access to resources and they have expertise. Second, we need the ecosystem. So this is a very important notion, but what is important that ecosystems can not only become a place where people can provide services to each other, they can also become kind of support net or safety net where people can get through the shared ideas and through the exchange of inspiration can provide support to each other. And finally, what is important is the vision for the future, which drives people together and consolidates their effort. And this vision should not only be government-induced, it should be community-induced and industry-induced. So I think these three components will help us.
Thanks. Just a quick follow-on question. You talked about, I mean, you talked about these initiatives that are happening. And in your view, how closely are institutions and universities involved in these initiatives in Russia and otherwise that you've seen?
They're very intensively involved. They see this as the way to pivot themselves. I like this notion, and some of them are actually also see this as a way to introduce a high degree of entrepreneurship on campus through their involvement with these future industries initiative.
So I'll just ask another one, which is you quoted Jeremy Rifkin, and one of the most interesting quotes that I've heard from Jeremy Rifkin is he said that he said the India is the Saudi Arabia of renewable energy. And I thought it was a fascinating way, because we in India keep crying that we don't have oil, we are dependent and stuff like that, and at one fell swoop, there was a way to change one's thinking and look at the whole thing very differently in a world of abundance. Do you see such ability for institutions to switch themselves and look at their deliverables, what they need to do from a completely different perspective?
I think in some cases scarcity is a bless and abundance is a curse. And the case of my country is very illustrative because we are abundant in terms of natural resources, and this led to some destruction of the human capital in our country. And I think without those natural resources, there would not be question that we need to base all of our development on human capital. So I think that there is very high potential in Indian society, and some of the great problems that exist here in terms of scarcity, for instance, water scarcity, also create enormous opportunities for the problem solving, which then can be scaled across the world.
We'll be, by the way, very happy to send maybe 200 million people across, just to balance things out, We have no problem with that. Professor Richardson, let me ask you this. I mean, you heard this, and it's an interesting conversation. How is failure treated, by faculty when they are engaging? And I know that you wanted to touch upon this, and I thought I'll give you the opportunity to do so.
I thought it was great that was raised. I mean, I agree with that. I think that if I come back to students, they are in a position in their lives where they can take risks. They're actually risk takers. They're innovative. They're creative. But you do need to encourage them to actually take a few risks that we may be less willing to take later on in life. But to understand, but for them to understand that with risk comes risk of failure as well as risk of success. So I think it's very good that you're actually engendering an understanding of that into the courses. And I think we all need to do that. Equally, you need to actually help the students understand how to manage that risk, because of course you can take risk, but there are ways of managing risk, of managing your way through risk, and understanding how you should respond to failure. Not just accepting failure, but understanding how you should respond to it in a positive way, and come back from it. And I think that's, again, what we need to try and do in our curriculum. I'm sure Janze has been doing that effectively.
Professor, let me just ask you one quick follow-on question, which is, the thing that's coming out of all of this to me is that students want to pursue a career. Institutions, in its absolute sense, want to pursue the noble goal of pursuit of knowledge. Right? So at NM, NMIMS, and in your own experience, Professor Nyal, how do institutions balance these two? Pursuit of career versus pursuit of knowledge?
It has to go to hand to hand. See, both are important. Career and knowledge both has to coexist. We cannot compromise either of them. It's very important to give the right type of knowledge, the right type of time. It has to be contemporary and futuristic so that they can build a career for future. So we have to make changes continuously and prepare our students for a career, whether it is they take it up as an entrepreneurial career, a career as an entrepreneur or as a corporate guy. They have to be adequately provided the right skill and knowledge and a direction to go forward. I think we have to balance both of them. Yeah.
Fair enough. Sanjay, I'm going to come to you next. Very quickly, what are the 3 things that you would request institutions to keep in mind if they were to produce more exciting entrepreneurs for Startup Village, more exciting people to work with the entrepreneurs in Startup Village, and really, instead of 3,000 people that have got employed in these new generation activity, 30,000, 300,000 get employed. What are the 3 things that you will ask for from institutions?
I think it actually boils down to what's the most important thing that you need to do to change the whole system. My view on this is you need to look at the excellence of working together as groups, and that to me is the most fundamental of this, because no human endeavor is done as an individual unless you are like a creative Picasso. Everything else in the world for normal human beings is done as teams, and unless you start looking at that social fabric of how people work as teams, because having seen a lot of teams, see, people fail. The technology is only one aspect of it. The commercialization is another aspect of it. But all the big problems in the country are because of teams. People not looking at the other guy, and because of a material world we are living in, social values are going tremendously down. So unless you create an ecosystem where people work in teams, and then measure them for the team output than an individual output, the rest is all secondary.
Manageable.
Yeah,
Okay.
the rest is all
Team.
secondary.
I'm sorry that we have run out of time, so we're not going to take any questions from the audience, but I'm going to request Professor Anandakrishnan to give his views, summarize and give his views, and just tell us as institutions, what is it that we ought to be doing?
Thank you, Anand. First of all, I want to thank FICCI, compliment FICCI in fact, Mr. Mohandas Pai and Shobha and all our colleagues for including this topic in the summit, the entrepreneurship and the employability, because employability is going to be a bigger and bigger problem because institutions are growing, and if you have unemployable graduates, you are creating a time bomb on the society. You don't know what its impact will be. So I'm very happy that this is here, and we had quite a bit of discussions. And the thing that emerged very clearly during this panel is that we now have to have emphasis, recognize the new scenarios, new technologies, new opportunities, and require a new mindset for the future skills. So that is, now in our own country, we had entrepreneurs, a great deal of them. I'll just mention a few. Mr. Dhirubhai Ambani, he was a great entrepreneur with innovative skills. We had F.C. Kohli, who laid the foundation for the entire IT industry to come up. We had T.A. Pai, who was a great innovator and entrepreneur in both finance and education. and we had many others, which now even in the outside world, looking at the new scenario, new world, now you look at the Tesla car, which has come up. Look at Mark Zuckerberg on the Facebook. What an amount of... so the whole idea is entrepreneurship and new innovations, they are complementary to each other, two sides of the same coin. If you have no innovation, entrepreneurship will not. So from that point of view, I would like to go through some of the initiatives that we have in India. Way back in the 70s and 80s, they realized that the institutions, particularly technical institutions, are coming, but the students who are coming out, they are not really, at the time the employability was not that much of a question, but there is a group of students, something like 25–30% of the students who want to become entrepreneurs, and there is no guidance that is available. So the first initiative that was taken at that time was to have the first the Gujarat was the first state to start this entrepreneurship development program. In other words, you give at least those who want to have the entrepreneurial opportunity. So the Gujarat Industrial Investment Corporation was the first one in 1970. We started the entrepreneurship development. It's a 3-month course, which was done at that time. And then they had the Gujarat Center for Entrepreneurship Development with the funding of IDBI and Ford Foundation, IFCI, State Bank of India and ICICI and so on. And now in 1983, they have an Entrepreneurship Development Institute as a registered as a society. It's a very good example. And then later on, Government of India, they started an Indian Institute of Entrepreneurship specifically for the Northeast. And this was around 1993. And then we came then the government of Department of Science and Technology promoted a large number of entrepreneurship development program, entrepreneurship development cells, something like about 60 institutions in the country, and they were fairly successful, and people who came out. And finally, they had the so-called STEP, Science and Technology Entrepreneurship Park. And this was one of the most successful examples was the one in Trichy, the STEP associated with the REC at that time and the NIT later on. And it was gave a tremendous opportunity for the faculty, business interaction, very successful. And they had about, each year created about 30,000, or not each year, they, over a period of about 10 years, they created about 3,000 to 4,000 jobs. But the thing was, I was on their board for about 10 years. The thing was that the total GDP that was contributed by this about 100 crores, which is peanuts in the country of, but they set up a model, training, networking, giving the NIT facilities to the STEP and so on. And so with all this, we have now, in the meantime, there were several other models. IIT Madras, Junjunwala might have given you a very good model of how IIT is. Now, IIT Kanpur has a model, SIDBI Innovation Center. In a matter of about 5 years, it has had 535 startup companies and 264 patents filed. In other words, the professors are doing research. How do you get the students and the faculty together and start a startup company? And at least those who have the entrepreneurial skill, they will be able to do it. And they had a combined about 264 patents, and almost 60 patents have been filed outside of the institute through this SIDBI initiative. So there are several other models that are coming up in challenge to this new one. And I only hope that we need not just one SIDBI IIT type of thing, or not one IIT. I think we have IIT Madras type, or the STEP Trichy, we probably need 100 of them. Probably we need 500 of them in this country, not generating. And there somewhere I heard that there was a India Innovation Fund, about 10,000 crores. Correct. And a few days ago, I heard that only about 1,000 crores was spent and the rest was surrendered back to the government. I mean, this is when we are talking on entrepreneurship, innovation, lack of funds, initiatives, institutions wanting to surrender 9,000 crores of an innovation fund is a tragedy. So I hope that we would now consider, as a result of this discussion and more, the new form, new types, new ideas which are emerging. The institutions are provided with the sufficient help and guidance and support to be able to create more mechanisms, as you call the ecosystem, to develop the entrepreneurship. Thank you.
Thanks, Prof. Thanks, Prof. We appreciate it. Once again, apologize that we've not been able to take any questions from the audience due to paucity of time. But it's a fascinating conversation which has resulted in a number of ideas, and I just highlight 2 or 3 of them. Sanjay spoke about the need for groupthink and group commitment. Sanjay, I just reinterpreted what you said, and therefore group results as a cornerstone of the way teaching is done. Practice-based approach to curriculum. Professor Richardson spoke about the creation of an ethos and an environment and placing it in the center, you know, a combination of career orientation, entrepreneurship, Porsches, and sports bar all together, you know, which opens up the minds and give them the aspirations. And he also spoke about the VC's role in terms of, and I thought this is interesting for those of us in the business of running institutions to look at, you know, its focus being innovation, creativity, ambition, and collaboration as the 4 key anchors. Very, very interesting. Professor Sanyal spoke eloquently about the importance of launching programs and what they have done successfully in the V School in terms of focusing on entrepreneurship and also preparing businesses for taking over family businesses and therefore taking over businesses. And the importance of bringing in role models to recognize students, to help students recognize that failures are a part of an overall pathway to success. And I think that's a key thing that came out. And Dr. Luksha actually threaded it all together with the strategic initiatives and approach, both from a skills perspective. We didn't get the chance to actually explore the skills aspect of graduate employability, which I wanted to do, unfortunately, lack of time. And that's one of the things I was going to talk to him a little more about, perhaps in another time. But he really talked about, and he said that the 3 things that are needed are champions of change, which work with young people as well as the slightly older people. You know, create ecosystems, and there is that's a whole topic actually, creating ecosystems for entrepreneurship and employability, and therefore, and create a compelling vision for the future, and use that as the base. Thank you very much. I hope you had a good session. Getting ready for the next.